All right, and our last session for this day, for today, day one, is the M-commerce panel. We've been talking a lot about M-commerce as the next big thing and how it's becoming increasingly relevant and significant for e-commerce India. So we again have very eminent panelists here. I'd like to first introduce Samarjeet Singh, the president of ICSLA. They're the ones who are facilitating the Twitter questions here. So, sir, if I can have you kind of come up. He's a veteran of the internet industry with 10 years of professional experience. In his last responsibility, he was heading the marketing of eBay services to e-commerce organizations. He was also involved in setting up one of India's largest gifting portals, tajonline.com. So, Mr. Singh, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah, you can have a seat anywhere. Our next panelist is Reshma Nagpal, the CMO of Dynamic Vertical Solutions, also known as DVS. Reshma, if you can please make your way up onto the panel, that'd be great. She's currently responsible for formulating and executing the business strategy for IP creation and marketing for DVS as a group. She translates global trends and best practices into country-specific GTMs and product USPs. Welcome, Reshma. It's great to have you up here. Our next panelist is Jay Bangiya from the Umento SG. Jay, are you around? If you are, can you please make your way up? I'm sorry I don't have a bio for you, but when you do come up, you can just quickly introduce yourself as when you speak. And we also have our next panelist, Abhimanyu from eBay. So please give both of them a warm welcome onto our panel. Abhimanyu from eBay, please make your way up. And next we have Mark Brohan. So those who were here earlier on at our first keynote session earlier on in the day know that Mark is the Director of Research at Internet Retailer and also the editor of Internet Retailer's Top 500 Guide and Top500Guide.com. You can, walk this way. I know. All right, welcome, Mark, again to the stage and onto our panel. Thank you so much. And the moderator for this session is Anil Rajpal, the head of Global Retail Practices, TCS. Thank you for making your way up. Anil has over 16 years of experience in management consulting and operations. In his role right now, he has been instrumental in setting up and developing the consulting practice in India. Welcome, Anil, and I'll hand over the session to you now.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We have been talking about commerce throughout the day, and it is being considered as the next future, or the future wave for e-commerce. And here is the opportunity for us to talk through some of the more realistic aspects of m-commerce. How is it evolving across the world? As far as, and how is the future as far as India is concerned. So let me start with Mark, yourself, and you were, in the morning you were highlighting certain aspect of m-commerce. You mentioned that m-commerce is coming up in a big way in US, and there is certain amount of transactions happening through m-commerce, which is 9% or 10%, it's growing rapidly. So would you like to tell us about the trends which have been prevailing in m-commerce as far as some matured markets are concerned?
Is this live? I mean, there's all kinds of numbers you can measure with mobile commerce. Some of the more important benchmarks in the established market show that, 3 years ago this thing was maybe 1%, 2% total traffic. Now you're kind of creeping up into the 8% to 9% range. And next year, let's say in the US, driven by, say, tablet performance, you'll see mobile as a part of total website traffic, e-commerce traffic, perhaps become, say, 12, 14%. So that in itself is significant. But I think what's more significant when it comes to mobile commerce, especially as it may apply to our audience today, is the fact that consumers don't see mobile as something separate. So retailers should not see mobile as something separate. What consumers in any market, be it a nascent market, be it an established market, be it someplace in between, They see mobile as the channel they prefer to use to shop you at the time they prefer to do it. So when it comes to one of the key takeaways for mobile in a mature market, let's say in the US, is that you need to understand how the customer is using that particular mobile device. It's a completely different path from a smartphone than it is for a tablet. And how you understand how that customer is coming to your site is going to govern what you're going to do with your platform development, your marketing and merchandising program, and what you may or may not do with your app development program down the road.
So you brought an interesting point. We'll come back to that point on which device the consumer is accessing your website or doing the transaction, and how retailers can cater to that particular information. Thanks, Mark, for your inputs on the mature market. I'll start with on the Abhimanyu, who just joined us, and I just give you background that Mark was telling us about how M-commerce is progressing in mature market and how the share of M-commerce has increased to 10%. And in the morning, we had representation from eBay and mentioning the fact that they are sort of very bullish on M-commerce. So would you like to tell us about what's the scenario in India and M-commerce? How is it evolving? Is it contingent on certain growth of smartphone, or is it it can be indifferent? So I got an ordinary phone, and can I do sort of the same transaction? So first question is more in terms of how is it happening? How's the growth in India? What potential do you see?
So let me start by saying that there are, unfortunately, it's going to be hard for me to share some numbers because we're also in the middle of a quiet period, etc. There are some concerns around that. What is obvious, given our global experience, is that clearly M-commerce is something that is going to grow. It's already huge for us in the US and in fact in a whole bunch of other, including Asian markets. That said, in India, we understand that the environment, the phones, basically, the devices are different. So when we invested early in M-commerce, our first offering was a mobile web offering. While globally, the development is obviously on the iOS platform, we also invested in apps on the Nokia platform, in Symbian S40, S60, because obviously that's where a huge chunk of the Indian market is. And if I were to share some numbers about how our mobile commerce usage has been across devices, we about roughly 65-68% usage is on Android today. Okay, about 18% is on the Symbian platform, and just close to 10% is on iOS. That's how it roughly splits up. Globally, the thrust area and obviously a lot of the usage has been on iOS, and we see a completely different scenario. It's something that we know this is how it is. I was just going through some IMI numbers, and I understand that the average cost of the device that is being used in M-commerce for let's say mobile browsing, not commerce specifically, is roughly about 8,500 rupees. So that's really where the market is. That's how we're seeing it. We also went down the route of saying let's create an SMS kind of platform where at least a basic price check functionality you can introduce even on an SMS platform. Again, I would say it's early days. I think if we were to bet forward, we would bet more on the apps and on the mobile web platform than on the SMS platform. That's how we see the market evolving.
Despite the fact that the price might be deterrent for the former two.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a deterrent. I think that's where the market is. I mean, and this is now data more from how the product sales happen on our site. It's clear that the market is growing towards the higher end in a category like mobile phones. So that's where I would expect it to go.
Thanks so much. Samar, you've been working a lot with Indian retailers and the pure play e-commerce companies, and you've seen them, moving from the pure, sort of brick and mortar or pure e-commerce. They're making the transition. Some are, committed. Some are, interested. And there is sort of a lot of action expected but not happening. So how is the transition taking place? I mean, are Indian, specifically the retailers, the brick and mortar players, are they really, interested in jumping to this bandwagon and, straight away, or they first go through, e-commerce, establishing themselves strongly their website and through devices which are not wireless devices, then go to wireless?
I think what we've seen is that the current interest is more in the web-based commerce. That's where their current focus is. They want to get that one right first. But of the request which we get from the customers who are interested in doing the mobile part of it, we've seen three different segments. One is guys who are selling hard goods. When I say hard goods, I mean books, music, movies, where it's a very structured data. The customer exactly know what he's surfing. We've seen interest in people selling those categories, looking to do either apps or more mobile-based platforms. In the lifestyle category, what we've seen is that the experience on apps is far enriched than potentially an experience on the web. And a lot of retailers and brands are very keen to deliver that kind of an experience. I would say more brands than retailers are very keen to give that kind of an experience to their customers. And are they very keen that the transaction takes from that app? No. I have seen that finally they make the transaction happen on the web itself. So that's where we have seen the lifestyle space happening. Where we've seen majority of the action is where a service could be delivered using an app. So whether it is buying tickets, which is not pure product commerce, but more service-based commerce. So in fact, one of the very famous apps in India is Book My Show, and we know all banking apps are very famous, but that's where we see the traction.
And do you see, I mean, this you talked about, of course, the present scenario, but do you think in the future, this is likely to sort of grow and, sort of beat the conventional media?
I think first I have to potentially define mobile commerce. I think Mark can throw light on it, but when the mobile commerce gets defined in the US, I think tablets are included into it. The tablet is included into it. If the tablet penetration, at least 7-8 inch kind of a screen penetration goes up and people start using that more often, I see that a lot of other limitations of the categories like lifestyle can easily be eliminated because you can do a lot of things on that screen size. So I see if that penetration starts happening in a very large way, and specifically with Android coming in a large way in India and delivering a lot of very inexpensive tablets, it could quickly change.
So you're saying that perhaps the biggest trigger will be tablets?
Yes,
and not really the smartphones.
For the product commerce, I feel it would be tablets.
Yeah. And which means that, realistically speaking, because, tablets is something which may not be that, a category which will grow that fast compared to smartphone.
Yes.
So, which means it'll take some time before,
it may take some. But I think today you see so many pictures on Facebook where there's a guy holding a laptop on the air because phone sizes are becoming larger and larger and people are comfortable with it. Other day I was seeing a Note 2 and with no offense to it, I felt it was a tablet, but people call it a phone, right? So it's getting into a comfort zone where people say, I'm fine keeping such a large phone. So if the phone sizes are becoming larger and larger, I see a far better future if people get comfortable with it.
So Jay, if I may ask your viewpoint on this, the market potential and your experience which has been there in APAC and Indian market.
I kind of subscribe with what Mark says. It's about the distinction between M-commerce and e-commerce is kind of blurring. It's about you being there where your customer is. It doesn't matter you cannot differentiate between calling it M or E or whatever. It's like you need to be into the face of the customer, whatever device he might choose. And right now it's like from 3 inches to 4 inches to 5 inches to 7 inches. So does the size make it mobile? Does 3G make it mobile? So 3G can be on a desktop also. The sizes can be all across. So it doesn't matter. The size doesn't matter anymore. The connectivity doesn't matter anymore. So for customer, I agree with Mark. It's more like customer doesn't think about it like M or E. He just wants to use what is more convenient where he is, and that's what they'll probably end up doing. And for a retailer, it's important to be where the customer is. So as and when the usage of these vast variety of devices increases, you need to be able, firstly you need to be there, and then you need to kind of make a choice to deliver your product or your services in an enriched way using the features of that particular platform. And that's when the customer will make, everybody could be selling medicines, so to say, but take your example there. If I can somehow make it easier for me to refill on a particular device, that would make it more, that would be my method of choice to kind of use it. So I don't kind of see it's like M or E, but I just kind of think about it. It's like being there where it matters.
Okay, so it's consumer basically, and just a means of accessing your products. Yeah.
And I don't think you can kind of expect not to be, or make a choice between that I'll be on this one and I won't be on this one.
So Reshma, you had views on how the technology is evolving in m-commerce, and in terms of taking a big leap in m-commerce. You mentioned that there are certain concerns still to be addressed. Would you like to mention those?
Sure. I mean, I think the fundamental perspective as a retailer, you must look at this, and I agree with you, gentlemen, from the perspective of a consumer. Now, what is the consumer here for? What is your strategy on taking the business online, whether it's through a desktop, whether it's through a mobile? And I think you have to be very clear to understand that when you're transacting, of course, issues of security are still a concern for a lot of customers in India and across the world today. So as a retailer, are you ensuring that transactions are safe? Are you marketing it correctly? Are you giving a comfort to your consumers? Because if you have a comfort, then the ability to transact online becomes much easier. So you have to decide what is your strategy. I mean, many retailers and customers we work with, they're using these mediums more to share information, to increase interactivity between the brand and the consumer, and it works very, very well. Why? Because you are personalizing your service for the customer better. You're understanding the buying behaviors of a consumer based on what they are looking at, which pages are they visiting, what color clothes are they looking at, what's their favorite eating items. So when you start to track this data, which is coming in through a mobile or online, I think the strategy is the key. Whatever phone device the consumer is going to be using, you must look at the strategy as your business to say, what is my objective of talking to my consumers? And of course, yes, when you're transacting, safety from payments and fraud are a concern to be taken care of.
You said that payments is one concern which has to be taken care of. So Mark, I wanted to get back to you on, you mentioned about a very interesting, before this panel discussion, you were mentioning about some very interesting cases where the mobile has been used very effectively by some of the retailers in the Western world. Would you like to share some case studies? You were mentioning about CVS and other players.
Well, we were talking about some specific, in this case, American retail brands. And the anecdote I was using was that in the U.S., if you look at core traditional e-commerce functionality, then a Walgreens, which is the biggest drugstore chain in the U.S. with roughly 7,000 stores, is right there traditionally with its rival CVS, another retail pharmacy chain. And so for a lot of years, there was no difference. You could read healthcare content, you could buy drugstore items. To a certain extent, you could do some things with your pharmacy. And then what separated Walgreens from CVS and what made a Walgreens this large American drugstore retailer we were talking about is that they began to understand that pharmacy is a very personalized transaction. So the first thing that Walgreens did is they went out and they hired the head of e-commerce from Dell. And she understood how to reach customers with a new device. Then they began to reinvent the entire experience of what they were doing with mobile online. And they chose to do a number of things that basically made how you used your smartphone basically the pharmacist in your pocket. And for instance, one of the stats they like to tell you about today is that as they got to know how their prescriptions were filled, how customers wanted the ease and convenience of doing this, 25% of all orders at Walgreens, this national pharmacy chain, are now done via a smartphone. So the takeaway here is whether you're big or small, they looked at how their customers were using, in this case, a smartphone device, and they tailored the prescription refill and emailing your pharmacist with confidential questions and secure payment, all in a way that made them a trendsetter and not just somebody else offering a standard mobile commerce site.
So just to add on to that question, Mark, you also mentioned that the customer behavior or the profile of the customer might be different for different applications. If I'm accessing through Android, it's maybe different to some other platform. Is that differentiation is a good way of segmenting the market?
Well, I really don't want to take up too much of the panel's time here because we have other experts that are very knowledgeable here. But suffice it to say that if you really want to differentiate with a mobile commerce strategy, what you need to do is to look at not just the customer path per device, but you need to look at the same path per operating system, and that's going to drive your, how you're going to refine and then ultimately have success with a mobile commerce strategy. There's a retailer in the U.S. It's called ShopNBC.com. They are number 4 in kind of the TV retailing market behind a QVC, a home shopping network. But if you have the chance to sign up for their mobile applications, their mobile commerce site, I would encourage you to do that because that is a best practice mobile commerce site and mobile commerce apps that they got to where they got to that point because of all the retailers I think we speak to, they're the ones that have taken the most time to do the most homework, broken down by device, operating system to understand what in turn they can bring back to the functionality for that particular device.
So again, getting back to you, Reshma, on the point you mentioned about certain concerns, and you had raised one valid concern on the payment security. I mean, what are the various, if you can elaborate on some mechanism through which this concern can be addressed, or some innovative payment solution can be thought about, especially in Indian market?
I think there are a lot of institutions that are taking the right actions, whether it's banks and government bodies to, excuse me, to automate and streamline the security measures, whether it's a wallet, whether it's card transactions. So there are a lot of initiatives being taken by various bodies to solve this, but rather than focus on the pain, I just want to make a point with regard to the potential. I think it's important that we understand as a market, I mean, today we have at least 850 million mobile subscribers, of which 15% are on smartphones. So that says a lot about where we are today, and we are predicted by 2016 to be one of the leading countries on the smartphone. So again, I go back to the strategy of a business. When this potential is there, what are you aiming for? What is it that you wish to get back from the consumer? Is it just about purchases or increasing a relationship? Between India and China, we are also going to be spending an equivalent of $10 trillion, according to the Boston Consulting Group, annually on goods and services, consumer goods and services, and this is by the year 2020. So when you put together the willingness of the consumer to spend and the various devices that are available in the market for the consumer to interact with the brand, I think and I feel very excited with my clients on the potential of this tool, or I should say the tools for the customer to increase the spending power and the brand visibility. So as long as the various steps by authorities are taken to increase faith with spending online, I don't see there being a pushback. In fact, the younger generation, which is 75% of the online users today, are very open to moving forward in this direction. And it's not just limited to India as a fear. There was a recent Javelin study which showed that at least 12% of the US consumers are still apprehensive of safety or fraud measures online. So we have a lot to learn from peers. We have a lot to take action with our own respective bodies. But the excitement should still be there from a brand to understand that the market potential is there. So I come back to the point, what is the strategy?
So that's interesting. Again, you're coming from the fact that potential exists and the fact that smartphones are likely to maybe become 15-20% of the entire penetration. And also the fact that there has to be a strategy in place. I mean, what do you expect of m-commerce, or for that matter, any channel? So Samar, on that point, I mean, what could be the objectives, when you get into a channel like m-commerce? What could be objectives? Is it marketing? Is it selling complementary products, or is it, what could be the objectives of getting into m-commerce?
I think as the discussion is evolving, what we're trying to see is that the medium has certain set of limitations. So I went from screen, and then we went from potentially the kind of navigation you get on the screen, and potentially a generation which is not comfortable using that kind of technology to do that part. If you'll ask me the objectives, I think what Reshma is saying in terms of marketing is a clear objective, because what you're doing is you're trying to find a way to increase your interaction points with your consumer. And on a mobile device, your number of interactions with that consumer obviously can be far higher, because him or her is carrying that phone always in his pocket, his or her pocket, and interacting with it. So to me, I think marketing is a no-brainer. It's very easy, and majority of the brands which I have seen and majority of the retailers I talk to are very clear that yes, mobile as a device has to be a very critical part of their marketing strategy. But I would go back to my thinking on the category part. I think the rest of the companies have to think about whether this category, the category I run in, is it more amenable to what limitations / understanding consumers have of that device, and that's how people need to approach it. So I'll give you an example. I think I was about to say, and Mark actually mentioned it. I was in the US and I went to Vitamin Shoppe, and I was with a friend of mine. We wanted to buy some multivitamins, and first thing he would do is, he had an Android phone. He will go to each and every medicine piece, and he'll turn the medicine, he'll go to the barcode, he'll scan it. He had an application. That application would immediately tell him that which online store is selling it at what price in not more than 4 seconds. It'll come to know. So he's standing in a real estate of Vitamin Shoppe and trying to buy from a store, and I think he bought 6 products, out of which he bought 4 from Amazon and 2 from another website. So somebody else is spending on a real estate and somebody else's gain is happening. So to me, a category like pharmacy, again, if I'm a pharmacist, I think it's no-brainer, especially reorders. Simple, it's just a click of button, I don't need to use my head. But if you talk, again, lifestyle, looks tough to me. People are trying hard on jewelry and all that, but medium has its strong, it's not evolved to a level, the screen sizes does pose some kind of limitation. But I think DVDs, pharmacies, structured products, I think it's a no-brainer. I'm very, very sure services, movie tickets, airline tickets, to me, mobile commerce would be huge, huge, huge in each of them.
So talking about the categories, Abhimanyu, which categories do you think are more amenable to the m-commerce piece? What's your experience been, if you can share some numbers?
No, in fact, as Samar was speaking, let me put some names to the apps that Samar was talking about. So part of the PayPal family globally is an app called Red Laser. Red Laser allows you to scan the barcode. Now, when you marry that into another service called Milo, again part of the eBay family, which surfaces local inventory from local retailers in and around you, you marry these two services and suddenly you have visibility wherever you are of, if you're checking out a certain device, you have visibility of the same device in other stores in the neighborhood, without even getting into an online world. And then you marry that to a service called Where, and then you include a service called Zong, which includes mobile operator billing. So that whole ecosystem kind of comes together. Since the case that we're considering is actually in store, it's actually a form of multi-channel, because the consumer could be anywhere and he's probably checking out some product. From that point of view, I see applicability across the board. But I do have one interesting stat that apparently a lot of vehicles get bid on through the eBay mobile suite of apps in the US. So I think it's obviously form factor does play a part in, what category works. I think an equally big part is anytime availability. I mean, if you're using these devices in your downtime, really, it's not just mobile surfing or shopping. You've already probably had a look on the web. You're kind of completing or closing that transaction, in which case I feel that the applicability is pretty much unlimited across any category.
So Jay, we talked about the potential of m-commerce and the fact that it is a sort of a no-brainer in many ways. You have to be present, consumer is there, and you have to be there. So what are the steps involved in establishing your presence in this m-commerce field? So what kind of steps a retailer can take to move into m-commerce? Right, if you can start right from the plan itself, that what's the plan?
So I think first thing is what Reshma said. You need to have a strategy so you know where you're going with it. But I mean, each one of you can have your own recipe. But my recipe here would be first is to get there, which means that I would start with basically with a site which allows me to cover this wide variety of devices which are there. So right from smartphone or not so smartphone, going all the way up to 7-inch, 5-inch. So which means basically the way I think about it, let's start with an HTML5 site to start with. That's the first thing that you do. And then going on from there, then you do what you do. You see where your traffic is coming from. You look at what category you have. And then if you know that you're getting more of and how people are coming in, so then you can probably come to a point which we were trying to discuss, that you will probably then know that I can get more return for the money that I would put in on this platform by giving this kind of experience. And that's where I thought we can bring Mark in, because he probably had a better answer on this one, that what's the tipping point when you know when to move from an HTML5 to an app kind of an experience. Because to me, I think it's extremely difficult. If you look at, if I would say that as an audience, you look at your phones. How many of you have a brand application? Most of us have games, utilities, a lot of other stuff. But you would then choose to get an application which gives you a richer experience, which actually makes your life easier. So that's what I think Mark can probably come in better. That to me, the challenge is at what point you choose to put your money into a much richer platform-specific application. But you need to be there. So I think you get started with an application which allows you to cover most of it, and then you choose to be on each one of them and giving a much more category-specific experience that you can probably.
Someone you would like to share some experience there?
In terms of how should your strategy be to go online? I think I would stick to the same perspective as to that first you need to explore the platform on mobile for your marketing, getting your consumer engaged. That should be your strategy one. It could be an HTML5. I'm a little fan of apps, so I would say that you can cross the line and straight away go into apps. Especially if you're looking at a framework like Android or an Apple kind of a device, an app gives you a completely different experience. It allows you to experience the service or the product in a very enriched way. So to me, that should be your step one. And based on how your consumers are responding to that kind of a marketing communication, you can decide whether they would be comfortable doing commerce. Again, I'll go category specific. I think few categories are no-brainers, and the rest of the categories they can go test and then figure out how would you roll out your plan.
Reshma, you'd like to add something?
Thank you. I would just add, and this is something we had touched upon earlier as well, I think the critical aspect is whether you're brick and mortar looking to go online, whether you're pure play online, and you mentioned this, Mark, a central operating system which keeps your business rules simple, I think is the key, because then whichever avenue you're going to extend your customer touch points onto, the ease of use for you as a business should be number one. Of course, the customer experience is there in parallel, but if it is easy for you to implement these changes and enhance experiences, your life becomes much easier. So I think a central operating system which enables you and allows you access across all devices and platforms is a key. That's a fundamental key.
That's fundamental. Okay, how are we doing on time? I think so. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity to ask questions now. Do we have questions? Okay. So the first question is mobile as big an opportunity as it is made out of to be? Transacting on phone is so cumbersome.
You know, you have to think of, let me give you a little historic perspective. Is this stuff going to happen or not? What's going to make it happen? Is it big potential? Is it going to waste my time? How long do I wait? These are the very same questions that U.S. retailers asked themselves way back 6 years ago. 6 years ago, there were plenty of phones being sold in the U.S. There were plenty of analyst reports talking about, you know, the explosion of this thing called the smartphone that's going to be coming online with U.S. consumers in the foreseeable future. But the only way you could buy something was to charge it to your phone bill. There was no credit card buy-in. Even in the U.S., cell phone coverage was extremely spotty. So yes, there could be a huge uptick in hardware over the years to come, but you have to with the smartphone, and most importantly, the infrastructure. You know, the 4 major carriers in the U.S. went on kind of a network availability binge, and for the first time, and not that long ago, you first began to get coverage that was pretty good coast to coast no matter where you go. All that took place 4, 5, 6 years that enabled mobile commerce to happen, so it does take time. The other takeaway with device, though, is if you look at people in the U.S. are now marketing to the smartphone and the smartphone app versus the tablet and the tablet app, a lot of people think of a sprinter versus a long-distance runner. The tablet lets you do a lot more. It almost replicates your entire e-commerce site. You know, it's a different buying cycle. It's a different customer experience than it is for the smartphone. With the smartphone, it's immediate. You've got return customers who maybe know your inventory. They want to find it fast. They want to get it fast. They want a three-step checkout, and then they're done. Having said that, when it comes to an app strategy, cell phones and smartphones are very personal. And so there are many forward-thinking U.S. retailers that are building up the business side, the marketing side, the merchandising side of what they're doing with mobile commerce because they want to be the pharmacist in your pocket, the airline in your pocket, the florist in your pocket. So that's a different approach than how they're going to develop their tablet strategy.
Abhimanyu, you would like to add something?
So, I mean, Mark already called out PayPal. I can share that at the end of Q3, PayPal was on track to do $10 billion of TPV for the year 2012. So I hope that does give you a sense of how big this is. I think we always tend to overestimate the impact of technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. So I think that broadly holds true as far as mobile goes in India. I think, yes, there are some India-specific challenges that we face. Our transaction flow is a little more complicated, but I think that's just a matter of user experience. I think it's just waiting to be cracked in some ways. I don't think we should make any conclusions on the potential with what the state of the market is today.
Okay. Will the NAV structure change on mobile? Talking about category structure as compared to desktop e-tailing. Yep. Anybody would like to take that?
Okay.
So navigation stuff.
I think, to me, I think Jay and Reshma did mention about that they need a centralized operating system from where the content flows in, the interaction. But the interaction is very personalized. To me, the navigation structure or the way people will interact on their phones, especially now the touch phones, would always remain different from how they will potentially interact on the web. Would it merge it tomorrow? I don't know. but it looks from the looks of the technology's potential today, it looks potentially very different. It is a very different interaction. To me, it's far more easier on a mobile and a tablet today. The navigation is very intuitive, whereas the web is a more GUI driven. It's from the Windows age, and people who've been using computers for long enough would be doing it. So it will remain, the navigation structures will remain different for some period of time, till the time these two technologies merge together.
It's already beginning to, the boundaries are beginning to blur, If you look at Windows 8 generation of stuff that is coming in, most of the laptops now do have touch screens. So I think they're also waiting for this to evolve, how much we'll jump from a mouse to the ability to touch the particular thing. So I think it will keep on blurring more and more as we go along. And the other devices would actually come in, wait for Apple TV to come in, wait for the Windows phones to get in there. So the navigation structures, as of now, you have to look at, one thing is touch with a mouse, the other thing is go out, reach for it. But as it begins to merge, I think it will get nearly similar, and it's going to get more and more intuitive.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think when we look at discovery, product discovery or finding, there are three ways we say. We say you can either search, you can browse, or you can be merchandised an item, right? I think clearly, what I've seen at eBay is that there is a shift towards search. Okay, so that kind of makes navigation a little superfluous. That said, we don't see it in India yet. But if you're talking about a scenario where the product that you're looking for is gotten through a scan of a barcode, there is no question. I mean, it's a completely different paradigm. It's wrong probably even to think of navigation on the mobile phone in the form of search and browse. It's probably, when it clicks, it's going to be a completely different way that it actually works.
All right, thank you so much to all our panelists. I know that was a very informative session and a great way to end up the day. So a big round of applause for all of them. Thank you.